Hello and welcome to Take the Lead Presents Virtual Happy Hour. We're glad you're here. I'm Gloria Feldt, co-founder and president of Take the Lead. We host virtual happy hours on the second Wednesday of each month at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We interview women who take the lead in their own lives and careers. So you have 1 hour once a month to boost your career. It's a quick, easy, and fun way to learn what other smart, interesting role model women are up to too. Please tweet your questions to @TakeLeadWomen or type them into the chat box. We want to hear from you and we'll get those questions answered. Take the Lead's mission is nothing less than leadership gender parity by 2025. Visit www.taketheleadwomen.com to find training programs for yourself and your organization. You can also find mentoring, coaching, role model events, and great content to help you on your journey. That's www.taketheleadwomen.com. Now, make yourself comfortable. Grab a cocktail, a mocktail, tea, coffee, glass of water, whatever you like, and sit back for an inspiring virtual happy hour. Women's History Month. It's my favorite month of the year too. So this virtual happy hour is all about the lessons of Women's History Month. And you know, my first power tool, and I put it as the first one for really good reasons, know your history and you can create the future of your choice. And we'll talk about why with some great guests tonight. And I'm pleased, as always, to be joined by Reshma Gopaldas, co-host, vice president for video at SheMedia.
SheMedia, yeah.
SheMedia, and a fabulous friend of Take the Lead, a woman who has been delivering fantastic film and television production in a lot of different venues, everything from Jon Stewart to Jezebel. I love that, you know. Those are the best, right? Fox,
Yeah.
CNN, you name it. Reshma has been there and done it all. But what I want to know, Reshma, is what were you doing on International Women's Day, March 8th?
March 8th. Okay, so I was here at work, which shouldn't shock you. And we had a special event here for our whole entire company. So our company is SheMedia. It's primarily women. And so it was a really good showing. Yasmin Hassan from Equality Now came to give us a special talk about what they're doing to get gender equality. And she actually told a really great story about how the media is so valuable in working towards this goal. And she told the story of her cousin's kids in Pakistan. Everyone in their family had arranged marriages and everything. And one of the daughters, this was around the time in like probably the late 90s, early 2000s, and she refused to have an arranged marriage. And Yasmin asked her, what made you say no to this, to go against the tradition and everything? And she said, Buffy the Vampire
Slayer. Oh my gosh, that's fantastic.
And
I
so,
I love that.
Yeah, I was pretty excited about that. And we ended up tweeting that out. And then Sarah Michelle Gellar retweeted it. And so, it's good to know that some of the work we do actually makes an impact and saves someone from a bad arranged marriage, maybe.
That is a great story. I love it. Well, I was actually in Austin, Texas at South by Southwest for 29 hours. I just went for one event with Brain Trust CAA, the company that we're working with to work. We're redoing our website and some other things, and they're just fabulous. And they brought together such a wonderful virtuous circle of companies that are doing things that are socially positive and good. And then I got to be the nonprofit part of that story. And we had Michael Stars, that is a company that is extremely philanthropic for all kinds of women's causes, and we've worked with them and they've been supporters for a long time. But also there were some incredible tech companies that are just revolutionizing how we do basically everything. And it was just fascinating to have this whole kind of mixture of incredible intelligence and innovation, and all aimed at making life better for folks. It made me feel really good. You know, also the bluebonnets were blooming, and you know, as a Texas woman, to be in Texas and the bluebonnets are blooming, that's like, you know, fantastic. So anyway, enough about us, Reshma, right?
Yeah.
We have some incredibly dynamic change makers as our guests today. And we have Patricia Mota, President and CEO of the Hispanic Alliance for Career Advancement, or HACE, and Wendy Murphy, an attorney specializing in the civil and constitutional rights for women and children, with a bio so long I will not begin to even try to say it, because Reshma is going to give you a better introduction, both of you, a more complete introduction just momentarily. But I do want to remind people, please go ahead and start tweeting your questions, because we've got some incredible issues to talk about. We're going to talk about not just history looking backward, but where are we now, and how do we make history? How do we create the future of our choice by knowing what our history is and valuing it and being able to learn from it and going forward? So we just have so much to discuss. And so let's start with the present, because, you know, today is tomorrow's history. I love saying that. As you all know, the mission of Take the Lead is to reach gender parity in leadership positions across every sector by 2025. And when people ask me, is that even possible? I always say, absolutely. I mean, why not? Why not? Why wouldn't it be? I think we are in a moment right now where we can make that kind of history and really push it forward. And diversity and inclusion within that mission is critical, because all women succeed or none of us will succeed. So with that set up, Reshma, how about you make the intros?
All right. Okay, guys, we have like two amazing women as our guests tonight. The first is Patricia Mota. See how well I said that? Yeah. Patricia is the president and CEO of the Hispanic Alliance for Career Enhancement. It's a national nonprofit that helps Latinos excel in their careers, with 52,000 members across the country. And Patricia, like I said, I'm going to have you do kind of your own intro. You know, like, tell us about your background.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me here today. I've been serving as president and CEO for HACE, or the Hispanic Alliance for Career Enhancement, going on 5 years now. But my journey with HACE began in 2010, when I had just was working in higher education at the time. Had just completed my graduate degree in public administration, and knew that I wanted to work for a Latino serving nonprofit on a national scale. And so HACE is one organization that I interviewed with that I saw potential to grow. I saw potential to come in and innovate, and phenomenal leadership, and nonprofit that was thinking differently than most nonprofits. And so I started as a programs director in 2010. And my first project was our Mujeres ACE, which is our Latina leadership program that at the time was solely in Chicago, and now reaching women across 10 cities in the US. And then my role evolved to fundraising and development. And when the opportunity, and my predecessor left the organization in October 2014, stepped in as interim, and formally as president and CEO since April 2015. And so I personally embody the mission of the organization, which is to advance Latinos across the country into leadership roles. And we are doing that for folks across the country. Prior to that, you know, I was in higher ed. I was focused on recruitment, retention programs. I worked at Indiana Power Light company for sales and marketing. And before that, as an undergrad at Indiana University, I helped co-found a nonprofit to serve the Latino community as an undergraduate student. So I made my way back from starting a nonprofit to you know, serving in different industries, to coming back to the nonprofit in my current role today.
That's amazing. All right, we can't wait to hear more from you. Wendy, I'm going to intro you quickly, and then I'm going to have you do the same thing. So Wendy Murphy, legal scholar, expert, adjunct professor. She's called the goddaughter of Title IX for her groundbreaking work, including victories against Harvard College in 2002, Harvard Law School, and Princeton University in 2010. The cases led to widespread awareness of sexual assault on campus. So Wendy, tell us a little bit more about your background.
Yeah, well, I have a very weird and eclectic background as an attorney that started as a prosecutor. So that was my first job out of law school. I was a prosecutor specializing in cases involving violence against women and children. And in that capacity, I saw pretty horrific injustices. In a nutshell, I saw women and children being discriminated against by judges. And I would object and say, Your Honor, you can't do that because you didn't treat the robbery victim like that, or you didn't make the robbery victim turn over all their counseling records. You can't do that to this person just because she's female or just because this is a rape case. And I would object and object and object and point out this systemic discrimination in the court. I mean, we didn't even get to screen the jurors for gender bias before letting them sit in judgment in rape cases. Hell, we couldn't even exclude rapists from sitting as juries, sitting as jurors in rape trials unless they'd been convicted. And we know 90+% are never convicted. So I was watching a really biased legal system kind of unfold before my eyes as a young lawyer. I objected on behalf of women as a class over and over again, and only to be told by the judges, that's really not your place. And one judge specifically said to me, he was very nice about it. He pulled down his glasses off of his nose when I said, Your Honor, you can't do that. That's discrimination. You are the government. You are not allowed to discriminate, and you are discriminating against this victim because she's female. The judge pulled down his nose, his glasses down his nose, and said, Ms. Murphy, you are the government. Your job is to state the law, not complain about it. If you don't like the law, you need to get a different job because you can't do that here. And I actually disagreed with him because I thought, I'm the people's attorney. I'm supposed to speak up for the integrity of the system. If I'm not going to do it, who else would do it? Who's in the room right now that's going to speak up for sex discrimination in criminal cases when that discrimination is undermining access to justice for abused women and children? And the answer was no, nobody. So I took the judge's suggestion seriously. I got a different job. The job I took, the job I made up for myself was to start doing volunteer work on behalf of rape crisis centers because they were getting subpoenas to turn over histories of women's files, and hospitals were getting subpoenas to turn over 20 years worth of history of women's files. I mean, literally a breast scan for a rape victim that 7 years predated her rape was being turned over cavalierly in these cases. So I started volunteering to represent the holders of those kinds of records. And I remember saying to my husband at the time, don't worry, I'm just going to do this one pro bono case and then I'm going to fix I know.
We've all been there, Wendy.
Yeah, I was a little naive. I said, once I fix the law and once I tell the Supreme Court in our state that this is going on, they're going to say, thank you for letting us know, and they're going to fix the system and everything will be set. And then I'll get a real job as a real lawyer. Well, needless to say, that day never came. So I just kept unpeeling the onion and finding more and more grotesque injustices. And then I started to become what I call an impact litigator, or a specialist in the representation of women and children for the particular purpose of not only helping them, but also using their cases to change and reform the law on behalf of the class of people affected. And that's what I've been doing ever since. So for example, and I do about 80% pro bono work because most abused women and children don't have money. And I made a decision a long time ago not to be sucked into that idea that, my priority should be earning a living as opposed to doing what's right for my clients, especially considering that I was doing civil rights and constitutional rights work. And I was privileged to be able to have the financial flexibility to do that. But I've been doing that now for 30 years. And among the things I've done, including some of what you mentioned, I filed the first ever Title IX case against Harvard Law School for sexual assault, the mishandling of sexual assault under Title IX. I filed, lots of successful cases against some of the Ivies in ways that have then provoked a lot of the systemic reforms. My cases against Harvard and Princeton are what led to the 2011 Dear Colleague letter, because I sent those cases to Washington, D.C. and said, you need to fix this system, because problems at Harvard and Princeton are systemic in higher education. Women are being raped in very high numbers. They're more likely to be raped if they go to college than if they don't, and that is unacceptable. So, you know, for me,
Just stop you for just a minute there, Wendy. I want to kind of drill down into that, because what I think you just said is emblematic of something that I notice often, which is that the more power women have attained legally and in our careers and with education, the more that kind of pushback happens. The more things happen to make us smaller, the more things happen that are designed to, whether subtly or not so subtly, make us step back, push us back. And that's a fascinating statistic, that women are more likely to be sexually assaulted in institutions of higher education than those that are not there. So,
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
want to.
And they're more likely to be sexually assaulted if they go to college than if they join the military. I mean, it's really stunning. The numbers are really stunning. And I can't disagree with you that there's a causal relationship between, as women advance to places of more power and authority in society, one of the responses is physical and sexual pushback. That's true, but there's also a bit more organization to it. I mean, we still don't have the ERA in this country. And if women, see, it's very hard for women to complain about being subjected to second-class treatment in the legal system when the Constitution says explicitly that it's acceptable to subject women to second-class treatment. They are second-class citizens.
I was just going to ask, I want to come back to the ERA, but it's a bigger topic. So I want to come back to you on that for just a moment, but I want to make sure that I get back to Patricia here. And I was thinking, as you were talking, Wendy, that there is an element of privilege in a way that enables any of us to decide we are going to change the system, that we are able to buck the system. And I know, Patricia, that you have said that for Latinas and for yourself, that a strong respect for authority is so ingrained in the culture that it might be why you're not as comfortable speaking out. And perhaps, you know, I would like to really ask you to elaborate on that, because I think there are many cultural issues that we need to be aware of and grapple with. So tell us how your training is helping women in that regard.
Absolutely. I think, you know, in the workplace specifically, one of the components that we discussed during our Latina leadership program is around traditional cultural values, traditional cultural norms that may make you uncomfortable or not comfortable with certain situations, let's say in a traditional corporate culture, for example. I myself grew up in a traditional Mexican strict Catholic household. But one of the things that a lot of Latinas grow up hearing is a term called calladita más bonita, which means the quieter you are, the more beautiful you are, right? And not to speak unless spoken to, right? And,
wow.
And it's other cultures, also other women have faced very similar types of expectations in terms of gender roles and things like that. But one of the things that has done in your mindset is when you go into the workforce, and there's someone of executive level role, or you're in a meeting, you unless you reflect on that, on your growing up and the things that you were comfortable with, you may not be realizing why you're not getting that next promotion, or you're not feel comfortable speaking up until you take the time to reflect and think of, well, how did I grow up? What are some of the things that I was raised with, but what are some of the things that here in my workspace I need to become familiar with to adapt in order to be effective as a communicator, as an influencer, as a leader. And it's not about changing who you are. It's about understanding how are you going to be effective as an influencer and adapting as needed to be able to communicate. So we do see that a lot with women who have achieved great success but kind of hit a wall, right? So this is in terms of not getting to that next level, not getting those opportunities with it's just being able to provide the space, which we do during our 14-week leadership program, to have these conversations and have those aha moments so that they're becoming empowered and going back and really taking, owning to their power and advocating for themselves more than they ever have before.
Yeah, you know, Patricia, it's so interesting, like, that you say that about culture and everything. I believe Amy Poehler said it takes years to unlearn as women what we've been taught since a very young age, and it's especially worse because I also, you know, Indian culture as well. Don't make waves, kind of just sit back and you know, go along and make it work. And then you get into the workplace and you're like, oh, that's not good. That's not good for me. It's not good for anyone around me.
Well, I mean, the other thing, the statistic that is pretty alarming is that Latinas on average are earning nationally cents to the dollar compared to white male counterpart in the same role. That's, you know, 20 cents below Caucasian women, about 10 cents below African American women, and so that's over $1 million of potential wealth lost over their lifetime. And Latinas are decision makers in their household, are making purchases, healthcare decisions, and so it also it affects the economy as well. It's something that we need to ensure that Latinas are self-advocating for themselves, understand their self-worth, so that we can do our part to help close that gap, right?
Yeah.
Right. So we've actually got some questions coming in. So I'm gonna take a couple of questions from the audience now. Jen wants to know, how do you think women can impact and change their history right now? So Patricia, you were sort of starting to head there. Why don't you take it, and then I'll send it over to Wendy.
I think right now, as women, it's starting to manage your own career. And to really take onus of your own skill sets and capabilities, and not expecting anyone or any role or position to bring you joy. How are you being present in terms of understanding your own capabilities, passions, strengths, and taking the time to reflect on that, which can be challenging with busy lives and so much information coming at us at a daily basis. I think if you spend at least 10, 15 minutes a day reflecting on what is it that you're passionate about, what are your leadership capabilities, and taking action on that, right? Whether it's having a conversation, a strategic conversation with your supervisor about a next opportunity instead of waiting for it, right? Whether it's taking the time to reach out to an individual that has your dream job or something that you aspire to be, to get to pick their brain. So really taking the time to reflect every day, because before you know it, it'll be a month later, it'll be years later, and you're like, I still haven't met my goal. You're taking the daily 15 minutes at least to work towards it.
I love that. I love that 15 minutes a day, because when you think of it that way, it becomes much more doable.
Yes.
Then you think about it as being this big elephant that you have to eat all in one bite.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, it's a great way of practicing intentionality, which exactly. I you know, in the work that I do, I'm often helping women understand the power of, they're embracing their power in order to have higher levels of intentionality, because it's kind of been leached out of us by the culture in general, you know? So I'm going to remember that one. I'll give you credit for it, but I'm going to include that in my next training program. So Wendy, how do you think women can impact and change their history right now?
So I obviously, because I'm an impact litigator and I'm always in state and federal court arguing about important things like baseline constitutional rights for women, on the grounds that nothing else we do matters. If you don't have equality at the baseline, nothing else matters. You can fight for equal pay, you can fight for anything you want all day long, and you can feel good about it, and it's worth nothing. It's absolutely worth nothing without equality at the constitutional baseline. So when I think about our history and where we are now and how to really transcend the sticking points we've struggled with over generations, for me it's simple: unity first. And so to me, we've done a terrible job as a class of people uniting. And it's not our fault, because there are political forces, there are moneyed forces, there are lots of interests with power that want women to be divided between each other, amongst each other. You know, if you're a Black woman, you're not the same as a white woman. If you're a Latina woman, you're not the same as a Black woman. Bullshit. I'm sorry, but that is bullshit. It doesn't mean we had the same life experience. It doesn't mean we're all equal in economically or otherwise. But if we can't get together around the sameness, our sameness as females, we are never going to make progress, period. So why do I mention this from the perspective of women's history? Because this divide and conquer nonsense that has been imposed on women for generations has been going on for a very long time, and we have never been smart enough to transcend it. I'll give you an example. During the antebellum South, when both Black slaves in the South and women across the country were fighting for enfranchisement, were fighting for basic citizenship, we were kind of on the same page. We weren't saying, oh, you're Black, we're female. We were like, we're all screwed. And we were kind of together. We were on each other's side. And along came the power of the media, among other sources of power, that promptly divided us by doing, among other things, falsely accusing women of falsely accusing slaves of rape. That's a very ugly myth that has lasted for generations. And I'm not saying that there were false accusations of rape against Black slaves. There were plenty. But they weren't coming from white women. They were coming from white men. Women didn't even have citizenship, much less did they have the power or authority in public life to be able to go and accuse anyone in court of anything. They were just stuff. They were men's property. And what happened as a result of that forced fight between race and sex way back then was that women, especially white women, became afraid to leave their homes for fear they might get raped by the scary Black men. And Black men became afraid to rise up against slavery for fear they might be lynched for doing something they didn't do. That divide was forced upon us. It's not legitimate, it was forced upon us. That has happened time and time again. That's just one example. During the Civil Rights era, race and gender were forced into a fight. And even today, the fight for the ERA is being done in buckets, with some people arguing for this kind of ERA and some people saying we should go to Congress and some people trying to raise money for Congress and other people trying to do it through the states and fighting in silos for different types of money. All we're doing is hurting ourselves and letting external forces.
I got to push back on that a little bit. I'm sorry. I am totally with you that we got to start with ERA. I just returned from Arizona, where I just yesterday marched to the day before yesterday, marched to the state capitol to persuade legislators, because I think it would be really cool if a state like Arizona was the 38th state to pass the ERA and put it over the top.
I'll take any state.
Oh, super cool. But I just want to say that I don't see women fighting about this. I see women working together. I see a lot of organizations, and yes, there are always who's going to get the media and who's going to do this and who's going to do that, but there's a lot more working together, and I think it's a bad rap for giving to. I think that's a little BS right there, and I'm gonna push back on it.
Well, let me respond because it's getting better. I've been doing this for a while, and I know you have too. It's been getting better.
Yeah.
It's been getting better, but here's my concern. We have groups like Time's Up doing absolutely nothing on the ERA, and they have millions of dollars. Millions. If all they did was say equality first, everything else second, which is what we all should be saying, because equality raises the tide for all of us, and then our voices become stronger for all the other things we care about, right? Right now, we are speaking with meek voices on every issue we care about, whether it's immigration or equal pay or anything else. We speak with meek voices until the ERA is law. Time's Up has millions of dollars. They're not spending it on ERA, not one dime. That is unacceptable, that is divisive, and that is hurtful. And that's what I'm talking about. We are not united.
I have to go off of what Gloria mentioned in terms of, I do see a lot of unity amongst groups and organizations and women in general across different backgrounds. And you know, I think it's about not necessarily equality, but also equity. Equity in terms of meeting individuals where they are, in order to build a more inclusive society, workplaces, and environments. And one example of that is when we have programs such as geared towards African American women, geared towards Latina women. There are unique experiences, values, and cultures that really are able to catapult an individual's career when they have that safe space and that environment in a small group to be able to share their similar experiences is powerful. Not to say that it's exclusive to certain subsets and certain groups, but there's impact and there's research behind the necessity to be able to do that. And then of course to come together and unify across diverse groups from different backgrounds. But I will say, from the work that in the diversity and inclusion space, it's meeting individuals where they are, meeting groups where they are, in order to build a more equitable, inclusive system.
I hear you. I hear you. And I think that helping individuals is important. Don't misunderstand me. I'm talking from a political, systemic place. My priority is always my client first. Even if they don't want to march for equality, I'm to care for them first, and I respect that. And I absolutely think that the needs of different populations, there's no doubt they're different. I'm not saying something other than what you're saying. What I am saying is that politically, gender is political. We should not be talking about sex or gender except from a political lens, because once we establish equality based on sex and gender, everything else gets better for all of us, including these things we're doing on behalf of individual groups. Equality first, everything else second, and we have to be angry about the absence of equality, even as we're fighting for what you're calling equity. See, equity has no meaning without equality at the constitutional baseline. It really doesn't. It may have meaning for one woman today, but I go back to suffrage as a good example of why coming together and being angry matters. Suffrage was a long haul. Lots of wonderful women fought for a long time for suffrage, and they were divided, even though they all sort of cared about the right to vote. Some didn't, but many did. And they were still divided about how to do it, where to do it, when to do it, how much money to spend, where to go. Strategy divided them. And then, and that's what made it take so much longer. And there were people at that time saying, you're not paying enough attention to people of color. That was a legitimate beef. But instead of having that become a reason to be divided around the base question of suffrage, we should have been smart enough, strategic enough to say, you will not divide us. You will not pit us against each other. We will.
I agree with you that did exist in the past, but I think we've made such strides to work together, and we cannot, and not that you were saying this, but we have to listen to the stories of Black women, of women of color, because they were silenced for so long. So yes, equality is something that we all should work on together, but we have to also be able to acknowledge, oh, these women have not had a seat at any tables for so long, and they most of the time, like Patricia was saying before, have been taught in their culture to keep quiet. So
absolutely, and they are in the lead right now. Women of color have been in the lead in Nevada, in Illinois, and Virginia. Women of color have been in the lead on the ERA. All I'm saying is, if we look at the big picture of why do women get divided between each other, amongst each other, why? It's not us, it's forces beyond us. It's political and moneyed interests beyond us that are coming down, pushing us apart, trying to make us focus on differences instead of us saying, screw you, we are not suckers anymore. We saw how that happened in the antebellum South. We saw what you did during suffrage. We're not stupid. We are not stupid. We are political, we are strong, we are fierce, we will fight, we will march, we will get equality, and then we'll get everything else we care about too. And we are all the same. That doesn't mean we have the same histories, but it sure means we need the same baseline rights. Absolutely, and I don't disagree with what anyone has said, but we haven't politicized gender yet, and we need to, we badly need to.
So how do you, I'm gonna pivot a little bit. So you guys are doing, both of you are doing so much to kind of change the history of how women are treated unequally under the law, and Patricia in the workplace. So talk a little bit, Patricia, I'm gonna bounce to you about your responsibility that you feel being this agent of change, and and the toll that takes on women too. I'd love to hear, you know, kind of the responsibility plus the consequences. You know, it's not easy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, I think the responsibility piece is really having had tapped into my own personal experience and why do I do what I do. Going back, let's say, to when I was a high school student, growing up in a low income, mostly Latino Black neighborhood in a public high school, having had an opportunity my junior year of high school to go to a new high school. However, this community was mostly affluent, mostly Caucasian. So for me, it was my first time experience the culture shock, right? But it was the AP classes that I was put in. It was the college recruiters in the new high school. It was the resources at my disposal that I did not have in my original high school simply because of socioeconomic status in the neighborhood that I was growing up. And ever since then, I tell people that I lived the education gap that exists in public schools in the US. You know, going on further along in my career is throughout me looking for opportunities to advance, to take greater leadership, it was always like, well, you be quiet, you wait your turn, type of response that then not only those experiences, but also looking at folks from my community and either opportunities and resources and information that they did not have at their disposal, because similar to myself, being first generation in my family, pursuing a college education, working in a professional workforce, there are things along the way that we just didn't talk about in our dinner table, that we don't have access to networks or a cousin or uncle that can help us with the internship or the entry level opportunity. And so there's all of these experiences that have kind of shaped the work and my own personal mission and the work that I'm doing today. And then the second part of your question was what, Reshma?
It was more like, you know, as an agent of change, what is the toll? Like, has it taken a toll on you what are your challenges with it?
You know, I think one of the biggest things as a Mexican, Latina, I identify as Mexican American, Latina, is the question as why are you married, or why don't you have any children yet? Especially from those in my background and culture, they're concerned, right? I think in terms of me, it's being able to be confident enough in terms of the choices that I'm making and communicating that back to those that ask and that inquire. But in terms of making sure that I have ebbs and flows, there's no such thing as having a balance with work and life, but ensuring that I am checking in personally and making sure is this the state that I'm comfortable in, that I'm happy with, you know, traveling and speaking engagements and really leading our organization to the next level. I think I work out, I run a lot. There's ways that I'm able to decompress and make sure that I'm taking care of self at the same time. From individuals that have gone through our program, especially the Latinas, it is the traditional expectations, family that take a toll on our Latinas, where they're like, well, I'm working this many hours, you know, picking up my kids from the daycare. And then, you know, my mom or my dad's telling me, why am I not making a nice warm cooked meal for my husband when he gets home from work, right? Or why am I having him take care of the kids when it should be me? Those are the things that mentally and emotionally I've known to take a toll on Latina professionals in the workplace, and trying to, and I think women in general, we're always trying to say yes to everyone and try to make everyone happy. There was an article that I remember reading several years ago that was done by several nurses that were in hospice, that worked in hospice, and they would ask those that were there what were their top regrets in life, and their number one that was written in this article was, I wish I would have stopped living life for everyone else. And more focusing on what their individual goals, what would make them happy. And I think of women right away, because women are, especially my mother, is so quick to please everyone else around them before themselves. And
because they were taught that, right?
Yeah.
They were taught that's their job.
Yeah. And so I think it's important to kind of just tune in and see where you are and see, making sure that you're checking in and saying, am I happy with this decision? am I happy with this next step, or asking for help, right? And being okay with that too.
Okay.
So can you all hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, apparently I wasn't able to be heard for a little while. So pardon me. I was standing here going, bah! and you couldn't tell what I was doing. I am now about 10 minutes past the hour. So I am, you know, in radio land, you have to stop in the middle of the program and remind people where we are. So I'm going to just take a moment, and then we have more questions from the audience. And if I could ask you all to reply in shorter answers so we can get through the questions from people, that would be really cool, because I don't want to stop anybody from feeling like they can tweet their questions in and we don't get to them. So if you have just tuned in, welcome. You are here for Take the Lead's virtual happy hour, co-hosted by myself, Gloria Feldt, co-founder and president of Take the Lead, and Reshma Gopaldas of SheMedia, and featuring Patricia Mota and Wendy Murphy. And I want to encourage everybody to hop on over to taketheleadwomen.com today and every day to find free resources to access for women's leadership programs that will help you break through barriers to get the career of your choice, to make the history of your choice happen tomorrow, and to also enable your organization to reach its diversity and inclusion goals. I particularly just want to mention that if you're a woman in finance or healthcare, we have some great programs specifically for you that are coming up right away. 50 Women Can Change the World in Healthcare, and 50 Women Can Change the World in Finance. And these are cohorts of 50 women at a time, chosen very carefully. And they're immersive programs of training, coaching, career planning, cohort building, and every woman makes a strategic leadership action plan for herself, and the cohort makes a plan together for how they can actually have an impact and change the sector that they're working in, because we know that women are just barely starting to break through that 20% barrier in leadership in every single sector. So, you know, it doesn't matter what sector you're in, we've got the same issues and the same problems, and this is a particularly focused program that helps women break through that barrier. We've just finished 50 Women Can Change the World in nonprofits in Arizona. We're about to launch 50 women, or we're in the middle of, I should say, 50 Women Can Change the World journalism in New York. So if anybody has an interest in any of these sectors, you can go right to our website, taketheleadwomen.com, click on the 50 Women Can button, and find your sector. And if you don't see your sector there and you want us to do a program for you, let's talk and let's figure out how to make it all happen. At the end of the program, by the way, this is another topic. At the end of the program, you'll be able to download a handy and actually very fun exercise that you could do that will help you look at your own history, think about how you have been influenced by it, and think about how you can create the future of your choice. So with that, if I may take a question from Twitter. With so many organizations out there, the politics of these groups sometimes create conflict rather than unity. Further, they have become very partisan, which pushes some women away from them. This hurts the cause. All women count. How do we change that? Now, I think this is a different issue from what Wendy was bringing up, because I see this, and what I see is that the kernel of this is they have become partisan, and this frightens women away. And the thing is, we have to like not be frightened. We have to not be frightened away, because the conflict is actually good. The conflict is good. The controversy is a good thing. It gives you a platform. It gives you a chance to articulate your issues when people are paying attention.
100%. Yeah. I mean, conflict gives you news. News gives people something to think about. I am fiercely nonpartisan. And
Are you guys there?
Yeah, I think Wendy froze.
Okay.
Yeah, Wendy froze. So let's so let me go. I'm going to go on to another slightly less less innocuous question. Did I get that right? A more innocuous question, right? Did I? A more innocuous question, which is from Lydia. what do you, no, wait. Here's the question. What woman in history most influenced you?
Oh, that's a good one, Patricia.
Yeah.
Patricia, do you want to go first?
Yes, there's so many. I just was watching a video on Netflix on the feminist movement, and it was a nice little, I don't know if you guys have seen it, just recently came out, where they're kind of revisiting a lot of the women from that movement. But I would say one of them, and history is started yesterday. I would say, because she's done a lot and she's received a lot of accolades, and just because of her fearlessness, is one, Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. No matter what end of the spectrum you fall under, and I admire her for her fearlessness and really going after for what she believes in, being the youngest and in serving in this role. But also you have individuals like Sonia Sotomayor, who also being the first Latina to serve in that Supreme Court as a Supreme Court justice, is another individual that I admire. That's really paving the way for others behind them. So
what I love about that is that those are not women from ancient history. They are women from today.
Was the question ancient history? Oh.
No. It was just a question. It was just a question. And very often when that question comes up, people will immediately default to someone like Eleanor Roosevelt or someone from the past. And I love the fact that what you're so cognizant of is women today who are in fact making history, which is fantastic. So there we are. Okay, Reshma, do you have some more questions?
Well, I have some more. Do we have any more from Twitter?
Actually, there's one more here. And this is, what do you suggest I do if I want to change the way my career is going?
Oh.
Did we get Wendy back?
This is from Michelle. What do you suggest I do if I want to change the way my career is going? So change the history of my career.
Change the history.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in order to, it's a combination of two things. So one is to reflect on your own, again, I'm reverting back to what I mentioned earlier, your own strengths, capabilities, and think about what are some career pathways that really will flourish with your, like what you have to offer in terms of strengths and capabilities. The other aspect that I encourage for individuals to do is to have coffee. Reach out to individuals that you perhaps have a career interest, that are doing something that you're following, that you are interested in, and ask them for coffee, whether it's half an hour, 20 minutes, to pick their brain and become familiar with their career. Because if you are considering a career change, there's something that you're not currently happy with, or you're not, perhaps your strengths are not being leveraged. And so I would definitely, focus on the strengths and do some research by meeting with individuals one-on-one, get to know how they got into their careers.
Great advice. Thank you.
Did we get Wendy back?
I don't see her.
Oh, I saw her join the meeting and then.
I know, she just vaporized all of a sudden. I wonder if the questions just really got so hot.
Oh wait, there she is.
She's coming back. Wonderful. Okay.
Oh,
Wendy, I have a question for you. This is a completely different tack here. Tell us about a woman who in history, past, present, or future, that has had an impact, the most impact on you.
I missed the beginning of that question. You're asking me to identify a woman who has had an impact on me?
Yes. What woman in history most influenced you? And that can be present or future.
I can't name anyone. What I can say is that there's no one in particular. What I was saying before I got zapped for some reason electronically is that I'm fiercely nonpartisan, because I think that partisan politics has hurt women, and that we need a women's party and not obedience like lemmings to somebody else's party where they get to tell us what matters. We had great success with the Women's Party for suffrage. We need the Women's Party again. In that sense, I guess I'm inspired by the independent women of our past. I mean, Lucy Stone comes to mind as the most aggressive. I like aggressive women. I like unapologetic women who aren't afraid to be angry. I have 5 children. I've intentionally given birth on a Sunday night so I could get to the Supreme Court for an argument on Wednesday morning in my state. I've got a book called Justice for Some that outlines some of the most outrageous injustices ever. I think the key is not necessarily to have a hero, but to be heroic yourself. And by that, I mean to be fearless. You have to be fearless, meaning when you're changing laws, changing systems, changing people's hearts and minds, you can't be apologetic about it. There's no reason to be apologetic or to ask forgiveness or to say, I'm sorry, I'm stepping outside of your comfort zone. You step into that area of discomfort. You make people comfortable with their discomfort. That's part of what change requires of us. And that's not easy to do, but it is doable. I mean, I've been held in contempt by judges simply for speaking up for my client in a way that she had a right to be heard about. And if a judge is going to tell me I'm going to be held in contempt, and unless I stop talking, I keep talking. That's part of leadership. That's part of fearlessness. That's part of change. And calling judges out and saying, why are you treating me differently than the guy next to me? Why? You treated him with respect. You're treating me with less respect. These sorts of things are not easy to do, but they're doable. And I just think we all have to support each other. And when a woman gets in trouble for being disobedient, we have to not call it disobedience. We have to celebrate it as direct action and exactly the sort of thing that we're not doing very well right now. We're doing better. I like a lot more of the direct action I'm seeing around the ERA, around the country. I feel inspired by that. But we're not unified about that. There's still far too much obedience among women. And I'm talking about all types of women, women in power, women who are homeless, and every woman in the middle. We are, in many ways still stuck in our roles. And it's scary to step out and to be disrespectful. But I have 3 daughters, and I raised them to be disrespectful to any adult who was disrespectful to them. I raised them to always confront and challenge power. And that's the people I'm proud of. Those are the people I'm proud of and inspired by. I don't need a woman from history to be inspirational to me. I need to see it in my daily life. And I need to see women, or I need to spend time with women who are fearless. Those are the women who give me energy. And that's something we can all benefit from. Just find places and spaces where the people around us are powerful and fearless and energized and moving in the same direction and not getting sucked into the abyss around silly issues that divide us. We need leadership.
So it sounds. Let me just, we're right at the last of the program, and I know you're going to have to leave very quickly, Wendy, and I don't want to, so it sounds like, because we always ask people what your big takeaway is that you'd like people to leave with, and it sounds to me like you were just saying it, that you want them to be powerful, to be unafraid, to be fearless, to not be afraid to confront injustice.
And when you feel injustice in your stomach, even though our culture doesn't give you the language to name it what it is, that's still injustice. We do not need culture to tell us how to dress, how to speak, or how to feel. And if we feel injustice, then it is our job to take action. That's how I work. I don't look in the books, in the law books, and say, oh, this case says that this is incorrect or improper or unfair. I know what unconstitutional behavior looks like. I know what second-class treatment looks like. I don't need some judge or court to tell me that it's okay for me to speak up for my client. I do it anyway.
Thank you.
And I make my own path. And
I need to give Patricia a chance to answer the question because we're coming to the end of the program.
I'm happy to answer the question. I think, Wendy, I so agree with that and all that you bring to the table. you have that knowledge, right? There's so many women that do not have that knowledge that need to be empowered to be able to be unapologetic and to own their own power. And it's like, I think it's like, how do we get to that, right? Because still have a lot of women, they're fearful, right? I think, you know, the one thing I would share is one of the books that I've been reading has been by Eckhart Tolle, and the New Earth, Awakening to Your Life's Purpose. And one quote that I shared with my team this morning states about, it's not about what you do, but how you do what you do that determines whether or not you're fulfilling your destiny. And I think that it's again about presence, intentionality, in everything that you're doing, every communication, whether you're anything from eating an apple to waiting tables to working on a proposal, right? And then the last piece that I'll say is a resource. So one of my favorite books that helps with career planning, because I know the question was brought up earlier, is The One Thing by Gary Keller, that talks about your lofty goal. And what is it that you need to accomplish every year to get toward that lofty goal, every month to every week to on a daily basis, right? What is it, those little increments, the steps that you're taking to make sure that you're able to accomplish that big goal, whatever it may be for you, for your career, personally or professionally.
Fantastic. Well, I want to make sure that everybody has taken a moment to download the very cool Women's History Month, Know Your History so you can create the future of your choice freebie that has been posted in the chat, and you can access it through the link there on the chat. I'm going to be very interested to know how you answer some of those questions. Yep. And remember to check out 50 Women Can Change the World programs and find one that suits you. So Reshma, I'm going to give you the last question, the last word question here. I love this too.
Oh, what is, okay, this is for both of you. Wendy, we'll start with you. What is a song that gets you revved up, like your kind of theme song?
Oh my goodness. You know, I'm such a sap for love because so much of my work is violence and hatred and horrific, really uncivilized behaviors, that the song that moves me, although it moves me into peace, is Claire de Lune by Debussy. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't get me revved up in the way that you said. It just gives me hope that people can be loving and kind. You know, it's all I got. That's the song I go for.
It's a fantastic song. I love that.
Great. Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Patricia.
All right, sticking to the Latina theme here. You know, there's several songs. I mean, I listen to everything and anything. But I would say the one that really gets me going is still, believe it or not, Despacito by Luis Fonsi. Gets you to the dance floor, gets you going.
That's great. I just want to say thank you so much to each of you for a really wonderful, energizing, speaking of energizing and powerful conversation. We have certainly had one tonight, and it's been great to hear everyone's perspective and to put all of these solutions out on the table. Thank you so much, Reshma, as always, my pal, my friend.
I know. Next time we're going to have together. This happy hour is not as happy as it could be.
My red little jar here. It's as good as it gets right now. Yeah.
And if anyone has any questions for any of us, just hit us up on Twitter. Wendy, what's your Twitter handle?
Yeah, I'm at WMurphyLaw. And my website is wmurphylaw.com, where people can get my book if they're interested, and Justice for Some. It's a depressing but important book.
Okay. Cool. Patricia, what's yours?
It's P. Mota.
Okay. Oh, that.
and where can people find HACE on?
It's ACEonline.org. So HACE online.org.
Fantastic. Okay, and we're always at taketheleadwomen.com. You are an integral part of Take the Lead's network of women moving to gender parity by 2025. go to our website, look up these women, follow them on Twitter, follow them on all social media, learn more about how any of their organizations can help you, learn more about how Take the Lead can help you and your organization achieve gender parity, because we have to get this done in my lifetime, y'all. That's just the way it is. And please share all of this with your friends and colleagues on social media. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining Take the Lead Presents Virtual Happy Hour. Be sure to tune in again next month. Remember, it's the second Wednesday of every month at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. 1 hour, once a month, to boost your career. Until then, power to you.